What would you do if you saw your teen casually skating down the sidewalk when suddenly an angry neighbor, enraged over something as simple as a skateboard, pulled a pistol and aimed it right at your child? It sounds like something out of a movie, right? But for me, it was very real. What she didn't know was that my son wasn't just any ordinary teen. His father is the county sheriff. And when she pulled that trigger, she unknowingly signed her own fate. This is the story of how one of the scariest moments of our lives ended in a way no one could have predicted. We had been living in the same neighborhood for years, the kind of suburban area where you could always count on a quiet, uneventful evening. It was a middle-class neighborhood, not fancy, but nice enough. Everyone knew each other by name, waved as you passed, and occasionally chatted about the latest local gossip. It was comfortable, predictable, and for a while, that was all I cared about. But that peaceful existence was about to be shattered, and it would start with something as innocent as a skateboard. My son, Ethan, was the kind of teen who liked to push limits. He wasn't a troublemaker, but he enjoyed a little adventure. Skateboarding was his thing. He had been doing it for years, skating through the neighborhood with his friends after school. To him, it was just a way to blow off steam. But there was one neighbor who couldn't stand it. Karen, the self-appointed queen of our HOA, had a bone to pick with anything that disrupted her peace. And apparently, a skateboard was high on her list of offenses. It wasn't the first time Karen had made a fuss over something minor. We'd all received complaints at some point, whether it was about a lawn not being mowed properly or kids playing too loud. She was the type who lived and breathed the HOA's rules, taking it upon herself to enforce them as if she were some kind of authority figure. But it wasn't until that fateful afternoon that Karen truly showed her hand. Ethan had just finished school and, like most days, grabbed a skateboard to meet up with a few friends. They were skating down the quiet streets of our neighborhood, laughing, goofing off, not causing any harm. Ethan was a good kid, polite, respectful, and well-behaved. But to Karen, a teenager on a skateboard was a threat to the perfect order of the world she tried so desperately to control. Ethan had just dropped off his friends and was skating alone when Karen appeared out of nowhere. She stood at the end of the street, arms crossed, staring at him with that familiar, disapproving look that we had all grown accustomed to over the years. Ethan slowed down, realizing that she was likely going to stop him. He had no idea what was coming. "You're not supposed to be doing that here," Karen shouted, her voice shrill and commanding. "You're breaking the rules of this neighborhood." Ethan stopped, the board still beneath him, and politely said, "Sorry, I wasn't going too fast. I'll head home now." But Karen wasn't satisfied with that. Her eyes flashed with anger. "No, you don't get to just skate around here like you own the place." Ethan tried to turn and leave, not wanting to escalate things. But before he could move, Karen's voice became louder, more hostile. "I've had enough of you kids thinking you can do whatever you want." Karen took a step forward, her hand reaching for something behind her back. I could see it from a distance, but not clearly at first. She was pulling something from her waistband. I rushed outside, thinking the worst, but nothing could have prepared me for what I saw next. In her hand was a pistol, a loaded handgun, aimed directly at my son. I froze. My heart skipped a beat. For a moment, I couldn't even comprehend what was happening. Was this really happening? Was my son about to be threatened? No, shot over a skateboard? Ethan's face turned pale, his body rigid with shock. He hadn't expected this kind of confrontation, especially from someone who was supposed to be a neighbor. Karen was shouting, demanding that Ethan get off the skateboard and leave the property. But I could barely hear her over the pounding in my ears. And that's when I heard the unmistakable sound of the door slamming behind me. I was out there before I even realized I had moved. Karen put the gun down. I knew that voice. It was mine, but it didn't sound like me. It was calm, controlled, but with a cold authority behind it. Karen's eyes snapped toward me, and for a brief moment, she hesitated. Her eyes flickered from the gun in her hand to me standing there, trying to take control of the situation. "What do you think you're doing?" she spat, her voice full of venom. "This is none of your business." "It is my business when you're pointing a gun at my kid." She scoffed, tried to stand her ground. But what she didn't know was that Ethan wasn't just any teen. His father, me, was the county sheriff. And the moment she raised that gun at my son, everything changed. This wasn't just a neighborhood dispute anymore. It was an issue of safety. And now it was personal. "Karen, you don't want to do this," I said, stepping forward, my hand held up, my tone even, as if I were talking to someone who had lost their mind. "You don't know what you're messing with." Her grip tightened on the gun, but her expression flickered with doubt. "I know exactly what I'm messing with." I took another step forward. "You just pointed a weapon at my son. That's not something you can undo." The tension in the air was suffocating. Karen's face was turning red with frustration, her hand trembling slightly on the gun. For a moment, it seemed like she might actually pull the trigger. But I wasn't about to let that happen. Not to my son. Not on my watch. "Karen, think carefully about your next move," I warned. "Put the gun down, and no one gets hurt." Her eyes darted around, unsure. In that moment, I could see the fear in her eyes, despite the bravado she had tried to show. She wasn't a victim of some wild teen. She was the aggressor, and she had no idea who she was dealing with. With a shaky breath, Karen lowered the gun. The tension was finally broken, but I knew this wasn't over. I walked toward Ethan, putting my hand on his shoulder. The relief on his face was evident, but the shock was still there, lingering in his eyes. Karen stood frozen, still holding the gun, but no longer aiming it at us. Her breath was heavy, her shoulders slumped. "You have no idea what you've just done," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not just anyone. I'm the county sheriff, and you just threatened my son." Her face drained of color. In the next few seconds, everything she thought she knew about control crumbled. Karen stood there, still gripping the gun, but her earlier resolve had shattered. She wasn't sure what to do next. The weight of the situation had finally dawned on her. I could see the fight draining from her as the reality of who I was settled in. "Karen, this is over," I said, taking another step toward her, my voice firm but controlled. "You point a weapon at my kid again, and I will make sure you face the consequences. Do you understand?" Her hands trembled, the gun now hanging limply by her side. She opened her mouth to say something but closed it again, probably realizing that she had no way to justify what she'd just done. The arrogance she had exuded earlier was gone, replaced by fear. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear Ethan's breath, shallow and quick, as he stood beside me. He hadn't moved an inch since the gun was first drawn on him, frozen in disbelief. I turned to him, making sure he was okay. The look in his eyes said it all. He was shaken, terrified even, but he wasn't crying. Ethan was tough, a trait he got from me. "Are you okay?" I asked, keeping my eyes on him as I spoke, never taking my focus off Karen. He nodded, swallowing hard. I didn't know what to do, Dad." I gave him a reassuring pat on the back. "You did the right thing by staying calm. We're going to get through this." Turning back to Karen, I spoke again. "You're going to leave this neighborhood. You've caused enough trouble, and now you're out of options." She finally opened her mouth, her voice shaking as she tried to speak. I didn't mean to. I was just frustrated." She looked down at the gun in her hand, as if seeing it for the first time, realizing the full weight of what she had done. "Frustrated." I repeated, my voice low but cutting. "You pulled a gun on my kid over a skateboard. That's not frustration, Karen. That's a crime." There was a long silence. The sounds of the neighborhood, distant kids playing, a car driving by, seemed so far away now. All I could focus on was Karen's face, her panic, and the realization that she had just made the worst mistake of her life. "Put the gun on the ground," I ordered, my voice like steel. "And then walk away. We'll handle this from here." At first, she hesitated, clearly torn between denial and acceptance of the situation. But I could see the terror in her eyes, the realization that she had crossed a line she couldn't uncross. Slowly, almost as if in slow motion, Karen bent down and placed the gun on the ground. Her hands were shaking as she straightened up, her eyes darting between me and Ethan. For a moment, I thought she might try something else, some last-ditch effort to save herself. But then she just turned around and walked away, her shoulders hunched, her head down. I watched her go, making sure she didn't try anything foolish. Once she was out of sight, I exhaled, finally letting the tension leave my body. But I couldn't relax just yet. The situation wasn't over. Turning to Ethan, I could see the fear still in his eyes. I knew this wasn't something any kid should experience, especially not in a neighborhood that should have felt safe. "Let's head inside," I said, gently guiding him back toward our house. "We'll figure this out, but right now, you need to get away from this mess. You don't need to see any more of it." Inside, I locked the door behind us and made sure the windows were secure. The last thing I wanted was for Karen to come back with some twisted plan, but I knew she was too scared to do anything. The shock of what had just happened would keep her in hiding for a while, I hoped. Ethan sat down on the couch, his hands still trembling as he tried to process what had just happened. He was a good kid, and seeing him like this broke my heart. "Dad," he finally spoke, his voice hoarse. I didn't know what to do. I thought she was really going to shoot me. I sat down next to him, putting a hand on his shoulder. "I know, son. I know. But I need you to understand something. You did exactly what you should have done. You stayed calm. You didn't escalate things. You didn't let her drag you into her madness." Ethan looked at me, still visibly shaken. "But why would she do that? Over a skateboard? It doesn't make sense." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. Some people are just looking for a fight. They want control, and they'll do whatever it takes to feel powerful. Karen has been pushing people around for years. This isn't about the skateboard. It's about her trying to control everyone around her. And today, she crossed a line. We're not going to let her get away with it. Ethan nodded slowly, the reality of the situation sinking in. I could see the worry still clouding his face, but I also saw the understanding growing in his eyes. "We'll take care of this," I added, my tone firm. "We're going to make sure she never does anything like this again." That night, I called in some favors. As the county sheriff, I had connections, people who could help me handle the situation the right way. I didn't want Karen walking free without facing consequences for her actions. It wasn't just about me protecting my family. It was about standing up for what's right. Karen needed to face the music, and I was going to make sure she did. The next morning, I called in a report to the local authorities about the incident, detailing what happened. It wasn't just about the gun. It was about the fact that Karen had taken matters into her own hands, threatening my son in the process. The next few days were tense. I could feel the quiet undercurrent of unease in the neighborhood. People weren't talking much, but I could sense the shift in how they looked at us. The tension between Karen and our family had created an air of uncertainty. But I wasn't going to let that stop me from doing what needed to be done. I made sure that Ethan stayed busy, distracted from what had happened. He had a lot of friends, and I wanted him to feel safe, even though deep down, I knew that the weight of the incident would follow him for a long time. He hadn't fully processed what had happened. No one could expect a kid to. One minute, you're skating, enjoying a sunny afternoon, and the next, someone's pointing a gun at you. As for Karen, I knew she wouldn't just fade away. She hadn't been the type to back down before. But this was different. She had crossed a line. No amount of HOA rules or personal vendettas could justify pulling a weapon on someone's child. I made a point to speak to the HOA board about what had happened, officially filing a report and requesting they take immediate action. This wasn't something that could just be brushed under the rug. I wanted them to understand the seriousness of the situation. As expected, Karen denied everything. She claimed she was only defending herself, that she felt threatened by Ethan skating too close to her yard. But no one was buying it. It was clear that her behavior had been escalating for years, and this was just the tipping point. Despite her claims, the HOA board voted to remove her from any position of power. They couldn't ignore the threat she posed, and they knew the optics of keeping someone like her in charge would be disastrous for the community's reputation. It was a small victory, but a necessary one. Still, Karen didn't go quietly. I could see the simmering rage behind her eyes as she was escorted out of the meeting, and I knew this wouldn't be the last time we crossed paths. I didn't care. I had my family to protect, and that was all that mattered. 2 days later, I received a call from one of the board members. There had been a strange development. Apparently, Karen was now spreading rumors about our family, claiming that I had overreacted and that my position as sheriff had somehow made me above the law. She was painting me as the villain, the one who had taken advantage of his authority to punish her. This wasn't just petty neighborhood gossip. This was serious. Karen was trying to turn the entire neighborhood against us, making it seem like I had used my position to intimidate her. The rumors were spreading fast, and I knew I had to act. I couldn't let Karen manipulate the narrative. I called up a few of my closest friends in law enforcement. I wanted them to investigate Karen's past, to dig deeper into any other interactions she had with law enforcement or anyone else in the neighborhood who could back up my side of the story. I had to ensure that if Karen was going to continue her vendetta, she wouldn't do it without facing the consequences of her actions. It didn't take long for the investigation to reveal something unsettling. Karen had a history of making false claims, particularly against men in positions of power. There were rumors that she had filed complaints against previous neighbors for things like abusive behavior and threats, but no one had ever been able to prove it. Her pattern of manipulation was clear. She had tried to intimidate others and twist the truth to her advantage for years. Armed with this new information, I decided to take the next step. I called an attorney to start the process of filing a lawsuit for defamation and harassment. Karen needed to understand that her actions had consequences. I wasn't going to let her get away with trying to destroy my reputation or the safety of my family. As the weeks went by, things began to calm down. The rumors started to fade, and the neighborhood started to return to its normal pace. Karen, however, disappeared. Whether it was the legal action we took or the embarrassment of being exposed for who she truly was, she kept her distance. We never saw her again, but the experience left its mark on me and my family. Ethan never fully recovered from the shock of that day, though he became more mature in the process. I watched him grow, his sense of security shaken, but not broken. He learned to stand up for himself, to know when to walk away, and to understand that life doesn't always play out the way you expect it. At the end of it all, I felt like I had won, not because of the legal victory or the fact that Karen was gone, but because my family was safe. We had taken control of a situation that could have spiraled out of control, and we had done so together. I realized that being a parent wasn't just about protecting your kids from the everyday challenges of life. It was about protecting them from the things that could break them. And when those threats came, I would always be there to stand between them and danger. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more real-life thrillers. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what you think about Karen's actions. Would you have handled the situation differently? Stay tuned for more unforgettable tales.